Each week I try to pick a topic that is going to be a major topic in this session and then ask the panel what they think about it. And this week I'd like to talk a little bit about higher education. The Star Tribune had a long piece consisting of the results of their interview with the board of the Minnesota system. We, of course, got the University of Minnesota as well. What does the panel think is going to be happening in the area of higher education? Let's start with you, Representative Mahoney.
Nuts. I knew it was going to happen. Frankly, where I'm going to focus most of my energy is on how we're going to train the next workforce. And that's going to entail, I don't like to call them apprenticeships, but that's the simplest way to describe it. And partnerships with our 2- and 4-year colleges. We have a huge medical science industry in the state. I think it's, better not guesstimate or estimate the numbers, but I know there's over 800 companies that produce bioscience products, and we just don't have that workforce. So where I'm going to look to spend my energy is how do we fulfill that well-trained, well-paid industry, because that's where we're going to have to go. You don't need to be a PhD or an engineer, but you do need to have some of the basic chemistry, and the biologics that will help you get a $60,000 or $70,000 or an $80,000 a year job. I suspect the Higher Ed Committee will be trying to figure out how to either bring down or not increase tuition. And that's about all I've got for higher ed.
I just want to say, it goes directly to the point that you were making. I have a relative whose oldest son kind of kicked around a little bit and then landed in sort of the Wisconsin equivalent of some kind of an apprentice program that you were discussing, and has done very well as a welder, of all things. And there's a real market. And by that I mean this is not something he had done before, but turned out he had some skill and some talent in that area and has done very well for himself in the intervening 4 or 5 years.
Well, the apprenticeships that Minnesota has had an apprenticeship program for 100 years. It has been more often than not the majority of all of that has been building trades. Carpenters, pipe fitters, welders, those typically come into the pipe fitters area, plumbers, electricians. And the building trades have paid for it all themselves. I know I'm a pipe fitter out of St. Paul's local union, and it's about $4 or $5 million a year that we pay to educate our kids. And what's funny now is that businesses are all falling in, because I chair the Jobs Committee. Well, we really want to put up an apprenticeship program. We only need $5,000 per apprentice for us to do that. And I kind of look at them and go, well, no. They're going to be your apprentices. You should pay for it yourself. We do. I think there's 65,000 construction workers that are educated, and they pay for it themselves. I'm not sure I need to pay for whatever company you or any of us here need to have to pay for that.
Representative Erdahl, higher education, what's your thought? What's likely to happen this session? What would you like to see happen?
Well, I think we need to make sure we're supporting the grant programs, for one thing. Looking at tuition, trying to keep a handle on what's happening with that and addressing the needs that our colleges and universities have. And Representative Mahoney talking about the workforce, I think we need to help to ensure that the colleges are turning out the workers that are needed. Like you talk about welders, there's a need for those. So maybe some other things we're turning out workers for that just frankly aren't going to be needed now or into the future. I've been intrigued by your mentorship, your apprenticeship program ideas. One thing I've looked at is in terms of our education system, is the Finnish model. Maybe you've heard me talk about that before. But one of the things that they do in Finland is prepare their teachers, I think, a little bit better. They have a year-round student teaching program. And I had a bill a couple of years ago that established a pilot program at, I think, Metropolitan State and St. Cloud State. And they didn't really like the model that they were working with. And the basic problem is that it costs too much money, because it's hard to ask a student basically to give up a whole school year other job that they might have had. Our program now is about 12 weeks of student teaching, but to go the whole school year without the other job that a lot of our students have became problematic. So maybe we use some type of apprenticeship model with education. And at this point, this is still maybe a half-baked idea in progress, but something that maybe we need to look at in the future to help prepare our teachers better.
It's amazing what kind of half-baked ideas get through and actually work.
Senator Eakin, your thoughts, higher education.
Well, I think top on the list of things to do there is to try to reduce the tuition burdens that students are currently experiencing, because they're emerging with so much debt. And it's not just tuition, but they're also struggling with the cost of the textbooks and things like that as well. And I think that it's important that we make college accessible to families of average means. I do think that people should be able to work their way through college like they did years ago when the state picked up about 2/3 the cost of a college education, and the parents and the family and the students picked up 1/3. We should get back to that level again, I believe, and to, again, reduce the burden. We need more educated workers now than we ever have before, especially with the number of people that are leaving the workforce, with the baby boomers retiring and so on. So we should do everything we can in that regard. And then one other thing has to do with the campus buildings, maintaining and fixing them, which we do through the bonding bill. And we normally do a big bonding bill only once every 2 years. And unfortunately, that bonding bill has remained about the same size ever since, I think, the early 90s is about when it reached the size that we've been doing lately. And unfortunately, I say unfortunately because while the bonding bill has stayed about the same size, inflation has continued to go up. So the cost of maintaining and fixing buildings and new projects continues to go up. And so we're trying to squeeze more and more into a smaller bonding bill in terms of inflation. There is a proposal out there that Senator Bach actually put forward that we should do 2 bonding bills, one just to deal with maintenance and fixing up the infrastructure we currently have, and the other bill to deal with new projects. And the reason he suggested that is that the bill, everybody wants to bring new projects home to their district, the shiny new projects that gets all the attention that you can put on your campaign literature when you're running. Nobody puts on their campaign literature that they replaced boilers or fixed a leaky
New
roof.
HVAC systems. We just don't do much.
Exactly.
They excite pipe fitters.
But that's the reason that a lot of we see this buildup of deferred maintenance building up year after year. So we have a huge list of projects that need just fixing and maintaining what we currently have. And I do think we should have another bonding bill just to address that part of it. And colleges is where there's a lot of that deferred maintenance, the higher education asset preservation, known as HEAPR. That's something I think we should try to focus on doing more about this year, and I think we should do a bonding bill just to deal with issues like that.
Well, the request that we have this year, the Minnesota State request is $150 million, and the University of Minnesota is $200 million. And keeping in mind that traditionally, the first year of the biennium, we don't do a large bonding bill. The average is about $200 million. So we're almost there. Well, we're beyond that with just 2 requests. So
Those are requests for bonding dollars?
bonding dollars.
Okay.
But what's the capacity by any standards? Our capacity to bond is well within 2 large bonding bills.
Around $3 billion.
Yeah. So
But
it's one
historically, we don't come close to
No.
that amount. If we were to do $200 to $400 million this year and $1 billion next year, that would be a little bit above average from what we usually do, just a little bit above.
I think we've done higher bonding bills than 200. I know you're...
Well, yes, but the average is about 2 in the first year. In the second year, about $1 billion.
These are extraordinary times.
Well, we could talk about a lot of things in that regard, in terms of our infrastructure needs across the state of Minnesota. The colleges and universities, their HEAPR dollars. I mean, if you add all of this up, it's a lot of money, and we are falling behind in those areas.
Oh, and roads and bridges. I don't want to forget that in the bonding bill.
And we should come back to the transportation. We'll come back to transportation when we finish here.
I'm going to jump in on the education. Because,
right, and I wanted to get to Senator Root on the education.
I think it's, for the University of Minnesota, we have a brand new president. And President Kaler's done a great job, but now we have a new president, and I think she's going to do a marvelous job and bring new synergy, and we have 3 new regents that will be elected this year. So I think the university will do really well with this new energy. For me, I just want to toot the horn of my own Central Lakes College in Brainerd. We quite a few years ago realized that we needed to do something with the trades, and they have a program called the Bridges, and what they do is they have partnered with the community, with manufacturing, with businesses, and so once a year they bring in, I think this year it's March 8th, and they bring busloads of students into the college. And we have over 200 businesses that put on demonstrations. So there's nursing, there's DNR, there's large equipment, you can weld, you can, the chefs, the resorts bring in their culinary arts. There's well over 300 career opportunities for children to have a hands-on experience, and these are not four-year degrees. These are where they can go and get a good education and go get a job. And so it's a marvelous program, Bridges Academy. We have manufacturers who bring in equipment and donate them to the college so the children can learn right on the machines that they'll be using at the manufacturers. And so it's really a wonderful program, and I invite anyone to come in on, I believe it's March 8th, to the school and see what they're doing there. It's a terrific program to get kids educated, and in my area, if you go into manufacturing and you can start a job at $50,000, $60,000 a year, you can make a very good living and a high quality of living in greater Minnesota, or anywhere for that matter. But they do a tremendous job.